Town Bank Mortgage, NMLS number 512138, is an equal housing lender. This podcast is for informational purposes only. And now, the man born with a 5 o'clock shadow and with the NMLS number 2028-201. He is a gentleman. He is a scholar. He is
Tyler Cralle.
And just like that, Thanksgiving week is upon us. Yeah, it's crazy. We're like, 40 some days from the end of the year? That's crazy. Man, 2026 rapidly approaching. All right, welcome everyone. Wilmington Mortgage. I am the aforementioned host of this podcast. Tyler Cralle, of course, loan officer, Town Bank Mortgage, right here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Here on the program, we break down what is happening with mortgage rates every single weekday. And we try and do it in 15 minutes. Well, you know what? We do it in 15 minutes or less. There's no try, right? What's the Yoda quote? I was just watching the Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos, I think it was CNBC, American Greed. What is the Yoda quote? Like, there is no try, there's just do or don't or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. Now, lucky for us, there was only really one major kind of news story that really moved rates on Friday, and that was consumer sentiment. So we're easily going to get through what's moving rates, or last week, what moved rates. At least on Friday, consumer sentiment from the University of Michigan's consumer survey showed that consumers are still worried about inflation, so much so that sentiment fell to its lowest level since June 2022. The headline sentiment index dropped to 51 from October. It was down 2.6 points from October. And like I said, the lowest reading since June 2022. And if you remember, that's sort of when inflation really kind of took off, or had been taking off, and consumers really were aware of it, I think, was around that June 2022 time. And yeah, so I mean, inflation's nowhere near there, but they're not liking these higher prices. And that is sort of the problem. I mean, when inflation jumps 9-10%, like we saw in 22 and 23, 40-year high inflation is that now that we're off that high and we're at 2.5-3%, that's way better, but it's not like prices fell. So it's like, man, prices really got out of control and then are continuing to rise. They're not falling. And we don't want prices to fall. I mean, not at least, we don't want a deflationary. We don't want something that is deflationary, that's actually going to make prices. That's actually worse. I know it doesn't sound like it is, but it is. It is a horrible, horrible spiral that will be very, very, very bad. So you want things to be deflationary for productivity gains, energy prices falling, but you don't want an economy where prices are falling, because that's usually a really bad thing that is happening that's causing that. And so that's the thing, is we don't get prices falling. So they jumped and they stayed at that level, and now they're just rising a little bit, but they're at that level. And so consumers are not a fan. The one bright spot from the survey, it's a small bright spot, is year ahead inflation expectations ticked down to 4.5% from 4.6% the prior month. And that's the third straight monthly decline. So that's, good news. However, it is noted that it is well above the 3.3% level that we saw back in January. So that's like 50% higher. So we still have concern from consumers about inflation, even though inflation is down from record, 40-year highs. Survey director Joanne Sue said households continue to feel battered by high prices and softening income growth, saying, quote, consumers remain frustrated about the persistence of high prices and weakening incomes. This month, current personal finances and buying conditions for durables both plunged more than 10%, whereas expectations for the future improved modestly. And so, yeah, I mean, it's people just not happy about inflation. And at the same time, we're having some weakness in the labor market. So, if someone's worried about losing their job and they're already worried about higher prices, they might not, be willing to ask for that raise. Where when the labor market's tight, prices are rising, you might go ask your boss for a raise or talk to someone. Now it's like, I'm just happy to have the job. And that's going to frustrate people. No doubt about that. So that was really the only report that we had, and the impact on rates was noticeable. The 10-year yield was down about 4 basis points. So the 10-year closed at 4.06%. That was down 8 basis points for the week and was actually the lowest level since the October Fed meeting, October 29th, my birthday. It's the last time we saw the 10-year at that low of a level. Mortgage News Daily had their 30-year fixed index at 6.34%, down 4 basis points for the week, and the lowest level in almost 2 weeks. So not a huge improvement, but we'll take any downward movement we can get. All right, we will take that. So that's really what moved rates on Friday to kind of close out the week. And like I said, we have a very busy week ahead of us in a very short time period. So we're not getting any reports Monday. And what we are going to be getting is 8 reports over a 2-day period, Tuesday and Wednesday. We're going to be getting these reports. Probably the biggest one will be producer price index. We haven't seen one of those in almost 6 weeks. Remember, we got that one inflation report, CPI, but this will be the first look at producer prices since, well, actually probably 2 months, right? Because it would have been mid-September. So we went all the way through October. So yeah, I mean, almost 2 months or over 2 months. We're expecting a pretty big jump, 0.5% in September. So this would be September data, not October. And that would be the third highest number this year, if that's actually what ends up happening. So, consumers are worried about inflation, and now we're seeing some pressure on producers. Not really what you want to be seeing. Also on Tuesday, retail sales are expected to have risen 0.3% in September, which would be the smallest gain since May. So we're getting a lot of consumer data out on Tuesday. Case-Shiller home price index also out on Tuesday. Consumer confidence, another look at consumers, that's expected to slip just a little bit. And then pending home sales on Tuesday as well. And then Wednesday, we get durable goods, initial jobless claims, and then the beige book. So we're getting all of that in like a kind of truncated timetable. And so, like I said, I mean, I guess I could do a show on Wednesday night, but I mean, what's the purpose? Who's going to be listening to the show Thursday? Listen, I might have an ego, but I know that no one's going to be waking up on Thanksgiving and like, oh my gosh, Tyler's new show is out. So yeah, I might just kind of save what we get on Wednesday and maybe do like a Friday show, like a Black Friday show, just like kind of have some fun. No one's working, so maybe I'll do that. But I do want you to enjoy your Thanksgiving. We're not done yet. But I do know someone who's going to be having, you know what? I have something you can be thankful for on this Thanksgiving, and that is the fact that you are not Bill Pulte, because he has had a horrible November. Now, of course, if you don't know, Bill Pulte is the head of the Federal Housing and Finance Agency, which is normally like a job that if I were to put a gun to your head and say, who's the director of the FHFA, unless you're in the mortgage industry, like no one would know, but yet a lot of people know who Bill Pulte is because he's very active on Twitter. He's very outspoken. I think his nickname is Little Trump is what they call him because he mimics a lot of the things that Trump does. Well, he has not had a very good November. Now, it started early in November. Remember the 50-year mortgage thing? That was him. Yeah, so he showed up at Mar-a-Lago. I think it was on November 8th. And he had a card that had Trump on it and FDR. And it said like great American presidents. And then it had 50-year mortgage under Trump's name and 30-year mortgage under FDR. Now, of course, we've talked about this here on the program before. The fact that FDR was actually dead when Congress sanctioned the 30-year mortgage. So I always thought that was kind of funny. But he gave the card to Trump, and then Trump immediately, like 10 minutes later, put it up on Truth Social, and the internet lit up. The idea was pretty much mocked across the board, and the people that were taking it seriously, like economists and even a lot of mortgage loan officers and realtors, were blasting it just from a financial literacy standpoint. It was so much more debt and very little savings. As I said, it's like $100 a month for like a $400,000, $500,000 mortgage. Nothing that's really going to, oh my gosh, open up financing. And it doubles the interest that you're paying on the loan. So like on a $500,000 house, you're paying like $1.5 million for when all is said and done. So it was just an idea that got panned completely. And according to Politico, Trump aides were not pleased. They were not happy how negative that was against the president. And then things kind of got worse. So then Pulte tried to kind of save face with this idea of a portable mortgage or assumable mortgages. And I think we talked about that here on the show, and just the unlikely, once again, it'll only apply to current new mortgages, and the math and just the way we securitize our loan, it didn't make sense. And so that was almost forgotten about after, the day he announced it. It was almost completely forgotten about. But then things got even worse. So it was noticeable that he went kind of quiet on Twitter, which, like I said, is his favorite platform, like the president's. Well, I know the president uses True Social now, but he wasn't tweeting like he normally does. And then we saw this article from Bloomberg, which said housing chief Bill Pulte becomes a potential liability for Donald Trump. And it was like, that's interesting. So here you have a guy who loves Twitter not using Twitter, and then all of a sudden he's a liability just for what? One bad, two bad ideas, which really kind of weren't that consequential in the grand scheme of things. Well, then we found out what was going on. So NBC News revealed that a federal grand jury was investigating the handling of the Justice Department's criminal probe into Democrat Senator from California, Adam Schiff. A subpoena sent to conservative activist Christine Bish sought records from anyone, quote, claiming to be William Pulte or claiming to work for him, including his chief of staff. Now, it's not exactly sure what they're looking at, but there have been some questions raised about how exactly President Donald Trump and the Department of Justice found out that, Adam Schiff, Lisa Cook, others found their sort of mortgage applications and found that they allegedly lied on their applications. Also, Letitia James, I think she's also in there too. And the argument's been that, little Trump, Bill Pulte, has been like, this was his way to get in good with the president, to give him something to be able to go after people who have gone after him. And now we have a grand jury that's looking into, is that what he did? Now, I'm not an attorney. I just pretend to play one on this podcast sometimes. I don't know what the law would be that he potentially could be, I guess, records laws. I guess if, normally if you're looking into something, if you were you'd like right now, you'd have to get a subpoena. And I'm not sure if that's the argument. Like, was he misusing records? I would think that the head of an agency would have access to all of that information. I don't know if there's privacy law. I don't know. But we found out why all of a sudden we haven't heard much from Bill Pulte. So it was a bad month. It started off, he has this idea, he gets it to Trump, he thinks it's going to be great, and it just gets completely obliterated by the internet, economists, everyone, so much so that President Trump's not even talking about it anymore. I wonder if the tweet's even still up. He then tries to counter with another idea that's, like I said, was forgotten about the day he announced it. Then we now find out that he's being investigated by a grand jury, potentially, for what he did with regard to these documents that he gave to the president about some of the president's political enemies. So like I said, if you're looking for something to be thankful for on this Thanksgiving, be thankful that you're not Bill Pulte. Just throwing that out there. All right, we got nothing going on today. No reports coming out. So like I said, they're all coming out Tuesday and Wednesday. But there's a very interesting Economist article that came out over the weekend that we're going to talk about on Tuesday's show. So prepare yourself. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. That was my Larry David impersonation. I don't think it worked. All right, you guys enjoy your Monday. We'll be back here Tuesday morning for another edition of Wilmington Mortgage. And remember, as always, do not wait. You buy real estate. You buy real estate and wait.